All right, Lexi with Build It Up East Tennessee, and I'm going to talk about trellising right now. Trellising is basically vertical gardening, and what you're doing is getting kind of larger vining plants up off the ground, so there's less exposure to the soil, to dirt, and also to soil-borne pathogens. And there's also more exposure to airflow, and it also saves space in your garden as well. So you're growing upwards instead of outwards. A tomato plant growing up on a trellis, takes up maybe a square foot of garden, versus if it were sprawling on the ground, it might take up, 6 or 8 square feet of garden, just kind of sprawling on the ground. So I use a lot of trellising in my garden, and right now we're going to trellis up some peas. Generally, it's better to install your trellis before you've got plants growing in that area, just so you avoid disturbing the plant roots. However, I'm a little behind, so I do have some peas that have already germinated, so I need to get the trellis up for them. I really like to use these kind of heavy metal T-posts, and these come in bundles of 5. They're pretty heavy, but they will probably last a lifetime if you treat them well. And actually, even if you don't treat them well, I don't think anything could really destroy these things. But I like to get at least a 6-foot tall post. For these pea, this variety of pea only gets to be about 3 or 4 feet tall, so the trellis doesn't need to be that large. If you're doing heirloom tomatoes or pole beans, you will probably want to get a 7 or 7.5 foot tall post, because that extra height is going to be really critical in keeping the plants trellised and happy. So the best way to get your T-posts into the ground is to buy one of these post pounders. The post pounder is nice because it really lets gravity do most of the work for you. So basically you just lift it up and pull it down. Makes pretty good noise, but that gets your posts in pretty quickly and effectively. All right, so you can use a lot of different materials for trellising. If you want to invest some money, you can use like cattle or hog panel. That's kind of a metallic fencing material that you can get from like Tractor Supply or something, and that's pretty expensive, but it is very durable, and you'll probably get 10 or 20 years out of that kind of investment. I really like to use this Hortonova netting. It looks fairly flimsy, but it's actually a pretty sturdy UV resistant netting, so if you treat this well, you'll get 3 or 4 years out of it. Fairly inexpensive too, and this is a commercial grade trellising product. It's used on like a lot of flower farms and in vegetable farms, so it does the job pretty well. Good enough. You want to attach it to your T-posts. I really like to attach it with zip ties, and you'll want to get a bag of zip ties that says it is UV resistant. Usually that's the black ones, but you want to make sure that it says that on the bag. Otherwise, the sun will just cause them to disintegrate before your year's up. So just to make sure, get the UV resistant ones. And basically, you see I've got the top one already established here, and you just kind of want to get it tight, get the zip tie around it, and get it on there, and that's basically all you need to do to install your trellis. I would do 4 or 5 zip ties on each pole, just to make sure that your is enough, and that's it. It'll most plants, most peas and beans, and even cucumbers will kind of naturally go towards the trellis and climb up. If you're using tomatoes, you're going to have to train them along the trellis, and we'll also talk a little bit about a different trellising method for tomatoes. But when you plant your tomatoes, you do want to get the T-posts installed. Again, you want to space your T-posts every 5 or 6 feet. You don't really want to do wider than that, or your trellising gets a little floppy and can get pulled down by the weight of the plants. And you don't necessarily need to be narrower than that. Otherwise, you're just spending a lot of money on T-posts and not getting more benefit out of that closer spacing. So 5 or 6 feet is pretty good on your T-post spacing. Again, you really want to get them into the ground before you get your plants in, just to keep the roots from being disturbed by your posts. But anytime early in the process is good enough for you. So Again, vertical gardening has tons of benefits, even just saving space is one of them. So we're going to encourage you to get your plants grown up the trellis.